Hey guys, I'm Pranavi Nissan and today I'll be talking about one of my most recent reads, which is The Secrets of a Charmed Life by Susan Meisner. So, The Secrets of a Charmed Life is a historical fiction book. It mainly revolves around an incident called the Blitz that took place in 1940 September in London. So, it's a historical fiction book with dual timelines. One timeline is in 1940, recording the events during the Second World War, and the second timeline is in the present day. So, I loved this story so much. It was amazing, tragic yet beautiful, and wonderfully written. And I decided to give this book a 4.2 out of 5 stars. It was really, really great. And I listened to the audiobook version of it. I managed to find the free audiobook for it, and I'll put up a video of how you can find the free audiobook. So, without any further delays, let's get into the premise of the story and my thoughts about the book. So, as I mentioned before, this book is a historical fiction novel and it mainly centers around evacuation in London and the Blitz that followed the evacuation. So in London, in 1940 was a very unstable period in London, so all the people there started evacuating their children and sending them away to rural places and countryside so they can be adopted by foster parents and be looked after. It was a very, very, very sad period because London was so colorless and joyless without such children. So after evacuation and even during the evacuation, the Blitz happened. The Blitz is the bombing of London by the German Air Force Luftwaffe. So the Paris had recently fallen in the Second World War and Germans' eyes were on London. So they thought that if they could bomb London continuously until the British army could wear out their resources, they could take over London as well. So from September of 1940 to May of 1941, they continuously bombed London and killed almost 2,000 people and set up the greatest fires London has ever seen since the 15th century. This was the Blitz that happened in the Second World War. So this book revolves around that evacuation and the Blitz that happened during it. So we are following timeline is 1940 and the second timeline is 2010 or the present day. In 2010, a girl called Kendra, she is a history major from Columbia and she is very intent on getting her interview with a person who lived through the Blitz and who experienced the Second World War. So she tracks down a famous painter called Isabel McFarland. And Isabel McFarland is 93 years old and she is an eyewitness of the Blitz. She lived through the Blitz and she's never given any interview. And for the first time in her life, she agrees for an interview and agrees to meet with Kendra to tell her life story and her experience of the evacuation and the Blitz. So that is the first timeline where we follow Kendra and Isabel McFarland and the interview process. The second timeline happens when the interview starts. Isabel starts telling about her true identity, and in 1940, we follow the story of two young girls. So these two young girls are sisters. The elder sister is Emmy and she's 15 years old, and her younger sister is Julia, who's 7 years old. They live in a very small cottage in London with their single mother. They're not well-to-do and they're not extremely poor, but not very comfortable. And ever since Emmy could read or write, she's always been fascinated with clothes and fashion. So she finds herself a tailoring job with a local bridal shop, and it's her dream one day to have a bridal boutique of her own and see all her paintings and designs come to life. And during her period of job in the bridal shop, the evacuation process starts. And Julia and Emmy, her elder sister, since she's only 15 years old, these both are sent away to a distant far cottage in a faraway village in England. And Julia is comfortable. She's 7 years old. She doesn't have any worries or troubles except for sticking with her sister and her mother. But Emmy's dreams are being crushed. Her dreams revolved around being in London, getting apprenticeship under a very famous designer and becoming a designer herself. But when she's sent to this cottage and evacuated from London, she is desperate for anything to happen to get out of that cottage and the village and come back to London. And this desperation starts up a series of events which changes the life of both the sisters so much. So those are the two timelines and two plots that we follow throughout this book. Emmy and Julia in 1940 and Kendra and Isabel in the present day. I have to tell you, it was a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful story. I started reading it a few days ago. I listened to the audiobook because historical fictions are best when they're narrated to you rather than read. I mean, any book is excellent when it's narrated, but especially historical fiction. And I fell in love with this story right from the first track itself. It was so engrossing and very, very, very well written. Especially the way the two plots, that is Isabel's and Emmy's plots and timelines, diverge together, and how you come to the final release and final conclusion of the story. It's amazing. You're awaiting the ending of the book with bated breath, because it's so, I mean, the author builds up such suspense towards the end, not the bad kind of murder suspense, it's the good emotional suspense. Like, everything is hanging in balance and you have to know what happened in the end, that kind of thing. I mean, it's, war stories, how cruel they are. I mean, war is of course cruel, but this story was cruel because of fate, because what happened to those two sisters was so cruel, and the events that followed because of that incident, which takes place in 1940, and how it affected Isabel in the present day and her life, it is so amazingly woven. It's tragic, but it's amazing. And the writing was exquisite. You'll never get bored. I never got bored throughout the entire book. It's about 11 and a half hours long, and it's completely, completely engrossing. I hope you listen to the audiobook. And the book is a bit expensive for its size and story, but the audiobook is for free and you can check it out if you're a fan of historical fiction. And being a fan of historical fiction myself and war stories, I decided to check it out as soon as I read the premise, and I did not regret it at all. So for plot, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5 stars because it was beautiful. And for character development is the only reason I'm removing a point from this from this rating. I would have given it a 5 out of 5 if not for the character development, because the character arc, the characters go through so much in their lives, and you see development, the changes from the beginning to the end, but it doesn't feel enough. Like, for such drastic things to happen and people to be affected so little because of that, I don't know if that's the writing's fault or just the way a person is. I mean, everyone can't be expected to develop in the same way because of a certain event, but somehow it felt incomplete, the character development. So the character developments, it's a 3 out of 5, and the writing was very, very good. Once again, except for the character development part, it was exquisite. Overall experience was amazing. Do not hesitate to read this book. It is so beautiful. And I hope you'll check out the audiobook or buy the book, and you let me know what you think about it in the comment section below. So until the next video, bye.